Dear brothers and sisters, listen carefully, for this might be the most vital truth you will ever hear about your life, your soul, and your peace. Every person's journey reaches a point when the noise of the world becomes overwhelming, when relationships drain more than they uplift, and when you come to understand that being alone with God is not loneliness, but freedom. Have you ever felt emptier in a crowded room than in quiet solitude? Have you ever smiled with someone yet felt a deep ache inside? That is not weakness. It is your soul crying out not for people, but for God. Living alone in truth surpasses any relationship that pulls you away from your purpose, your peace, and the presence of the Almighty. Don't let the world convince you that your worth depends on how many people surround you. Don't let loneliness shame you into seeking attention, validation, or love that lacks truth. Yes, it is better to be alone with God than to be with someone who leaves you spiritually starved. Sometimes solitude becomes the sanctuary where God whispers. When the room quiets, the phone stops ringing and distractions fade. That is when the divine voice rises. That is when you begin to see yourself not through the eyes of a partner, a friend, or society, but through the eyes of God. That is when the fog lifts and you start to recognize who you truly are. A soul made for greatness, not manipulation. A heart created for love, not chaos. A mind shaped for peace, not confusion. God will sometimes remove people from your life so you can finally see Him clearly. He allows breakups, betrayals, and silence not to break you but to bring you back. Sometimes the most toxic relationship is the one that distracts you from your divine calling. Sometimes you don't realize how much someone suffocated your spirit until they're gone and then you breathe. Living alone gives you the space to rediscover your worth. It silences opinions, criticism, and expectations, making room for the only voice that truly matters, God's. You don't need a romantic partner to be complete. You don't need someone beside you in bed to feel whole. What you need is to walk so closely with God that anyone who approaches you must go through Him first. There is power in being alone. Sacred power. Because when you're alone, you can no longer hide. Masks come off, performances in, and truth begins. Some of history's most powerful people were shaped in solitude. Not in applause, not in crowds, but in caves, deserts, and wilderness where it was just the man and God. The world teaches you to chase love, people, and someone to complete your life. But God teaches you to stand still, and be content in Him. When you stop chasing after others and begin to embrace His presence, something shifts inside you. Anxiety starts to fade away. The feeling of neediness begins to dissolve. You start to radiate peace. And the peace of God cannot be created or copied. It can only be experienced in the quiet stillness of solitude. Many of you fear being alone because you have mistaken it for being unloved. But let me assure you, there is no greater love than the love of God. Human love can be unreliable. It changes with moods, seasons, and selfishness. But God's love is unwavering. It does not abandon you when you're broken. It doesn't compare you to others. It doesn't tell lies to keep you close. It stays, heals, and restores. Living alone is not a curse. It is a calling. It is a divine appointment to dive deeper into your purpose. You will never find clarity amid confusion. You will never find healing in chaos. And you will never find peace in a person who is not at peace with God. Some of you are holding on to relationships because you fear starting over. But listen to this powerful truth. Every time you walk away from something God did not send, you create space for what He has planned. There is no greater tragedy than remaining connected to someone who drains your soul. You were not made to endure dysfunction. You were not created to diminish yourself, to make others comfortable. You were not made to beg for attention, love, or loyalty. You were created to walk in divine power, but you cannot access that power while you are entangled with the wrong people. Living alone is not about isolation. It's about elevation. It's about setting yourself apart so God can do a new work in you. Some miracles do not happen in the crowd. Some breakthroughs don't happen in relationships. They happen in the quiet space where it's just you and God. They happen when no one else is there to distract you. They happen when you finally say, God, take everything and give me you. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is a cry of the flesh, but aloneness is often a divine setup. God does his best work when the world grows silent. He reshapes your character. He rewires your thinking. He uproots the lies you believed about yourself, and he plants the seeds of purpose, strength, and divine identity. You must stop fearing what the world calls singleness or loneliness. Stop treating it as a season to endure. It is a season to embrace. It is in this place that your discernment sharpens, your standards rise, your peace grows. You no longer accept what is cheap because you understand your value. You no longer tolerate what is toxic because you have tasted what is holy. Some of you have cried yourselves to sleep because someone walked away. Some of you have begged God to bring someone back. But let me ask you, why would God bring back someone who damages what he is healing? Why would God return what he has rescued you from? Some people were not removed as punishment, but as protection. God permits removal to prevent destruction. Living alone is not a punishment. It is a pruning process. Only through pruning can you truly bear fruit. You must learn to sit in silence, not as a victim, but as a vessel ready to be filled. A vessel ready to be filled. A vessel ready to be used. A vessel ready to overflow with strength, peace, and clarity. Let the world chase after relationships. Let the world mock your solitude. But you choose God. Choose peace. Choose purpose. Because a peaceful life alone is far more blessed than a chaotic life with someone who does not value your soul. You do not need another voice in your life if it silences the voice of God. You do not need a warm body beside you if it leaves your spirit cold. You do not need a partner who applauds you publicly, but dishonors you privately. What you need is alignment with God. What you need is restoration from the inside out. And that cannot be done while you are entangled with what wounds you. Living alone teaches you how to be full without needing to be filled by another person. It teaches you how to stand when no one applauds. It teaches you how to glow without validation. That is real power. That is divine maturity. Because the truth is, until you are happy alone, you will never be happy with anyone else. You must stop measuring your worth by your relationship status. You are not half of a soul. You are not waiting for completion. You are whole. You are loved. You are enough. And you are already in a relationship with the one who created you, formed you, breathed life into you, and walks with you every step of the way. Some of you are crying out for companionship when God is calling you to consecration. Some of you are searching for love when God is drawing you into his presence. Stop looking outward. Start looking upward. Because the love you crave is not found in someone else's arms. It is found in God's presence. There is a sacred joy that comes from living alone with God. A joy that does not fade when people walk away. A joy that does not depend on compliments or company. a joy that radiates from within because you know who you are, and more importantly, you know whose you are. Let the world chase trends, let others chase temporary pleasures, but you remain separate, be set apart. God will bless your aloneness, God will increase your discernment, God will multiply your strength. And when the time is right, if it aligns with His will, God will bring the right people, people who do not compete with Him, but complement what He is building in you. But until then, rest. Rest in the silence. Rest in the solitude. Rest in the sacred space where it is just you and God. That is not a void. That is victory. That is not emptiness. That is empowerment. Living alone is not the conclusion of your story. It may very well be the beginning of the most powerful chapter of your life. Because when everything else is stripped away and only God remains, you will discover that He is enough, more than enough. And when you reach that place where your soul is saturated with His presence, you will see that nothing else compares. No relationship, no companionship, no human touch can replace the sacred intimacy between a soul and its Creator. That is the truth the world will never reveal to you. But God will show you if you dare to walk the path of solitude. There is a sacred weight resting on the soul that chooses to walk alone with God. It is not the burden of loneliness, it is the mantle of divine preparation. You must grasp this truth with every fiber of your being. Solitude is not suffering when it is ordained by God. It is a divine strategy, a holy separation, a season where God hides you not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because some battles can only be won in silence. Some anointings are only poured out in private. Some revelations cannot be received amid noise, confusion, and distractions. God is not interested in crowded hearts. He is not competing for space. When He calls you into isolation, it is because He desires your full attention. When He allows certain people to walk away, it is because He is protecting your ears from voices that were never meant to shape your destiny. You don't need another opinion. When God is speaking truth, you don't need another relationship. When God is establishing covenant with your soul, He is not trying to make you feel abandoned. He is preparing you for something others cannot carry. Many of us pray for strength, but reject the path that leads to it. We ask God for clarity, but fear the silence where clarity is born. We want peace, but cling to people who constantly bring us pain. In His mercy, God begins to remove what you refuse to release. He will close doors you keep forcing open. He will sever eyes you keep mending, not because He wants to see you hurt, but because He knows what lies ahead, and He cannot allow you to carry dead weight into a living future. Living alone becomes a sanctuary for growth when you stop seeing it through the eyes of the flesh and begin to view it through the lens of the Spirit. The world may tell you that success looks like marriage, partnership, companionship, but the truth is that success is walking in obedience to God regardless of who walks with you or not. If you must walk alone to obey God, then walk. If you must lose people to keep your peace, then let them go. If you must sit in silence to hear the voice of the Most High, then be still. There are divine assignments placed on your life that cannot be fulfilled while your heart is entangled with the wrong people. Some of you are trying to bring others along into a future that God has designed solely for you, and every time you hold on tightly, you delay what God intends to release. Every time you try to explain your worth to someone who fails to see it, you exhaust your spirit. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who are not even qualified to understand your purpose. Stop lowering your standards to accommodate those who are never called to rise with you. God sees what you do in secret. He sees the tears you never voice. He knows the ache in your chest when you turn off the lights and lie down in a quiet room. But hear this, your quiet season is not your punishment, it is your preparation. Do not curse the silence. It is within the silence that your roots grow deep. It is in the silence that your character is refined. It is in the silence that your faith is tested and your strength is born. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them call you distant, cold, difficult. Let them say you've changed. You have. You've grown. You've awakened. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your spirit. That not every relationship deserves revival. That not every connection is divine. You've come to understand that peace is a gift from God, and anything that disturbs it must be examined. You've recognized that some people were assignments, but their season is finished. Living alone is not about rejecting love. It's about protecting your peace. It's not about bitterness. It's about boundaries. You are not obligated to remain connected to what wounds your soul. You are not bound to what drains your life. You owe no one access to your spirit except the one who created it. And when you walk in that authority, you begin to move differently. You speak with power. You choose with wisdom. You wait with discernment. And most importantly, you refuse to settle. Do not fear silence. God performs his loudest work in quiet seasons. Do not fear solitude. God refines his greatest vessels when they are hidden. Consider this. When a tree is planted, it does not bloom immediately. It must first go underground in darkness, in silence, while its roots take hold. Only then does it break through the surface. And when it does, it stands tall, firm, and unshakable. That is exactly what God is doing in you. You are being rooted, grounded, and strengthened, so that when the storm arrives, you will not fall. When the wind howls, you will not break. So when the next relationship enters your life, it will have to meet a version of you that is anchored in God, not desperate for people. Some of you are waiting for someone to come and complete your story. But your story is not incomplete. You are not a half. You are whole. And until you believe that, you will continue to let people treat you as optional. You will continue to accept behaviors that insult your soul. You will continue to crave what God is calling you to crucify. No more. Today is the day you stop idolizing relationships and begin to prioritize God. Today is the day you stop begging for love and start walking firmly in your purpose. Today is the day you realize that living alone doesn't mean being without. It means being within the will of God, within the peace of God, within the presence of God. You will never find true rest until your spirit is settled in him. You will never find a person who can fill the void only God was meant to fill. You will never build a healthy relationship until you build a strong relationship with your Creator. Because the truth is, your solitude will teach you what your spirit truly needs. It will expose what you have tolerated. It will reveal what you have avoided. And most importantly, it will reconnect you to the voice of God. A voice many of us have drowned out in the noise of others. Let this be the season when you stop running from being alone and start running into the arms of your Creator. Let this be the season when you no longer see your value through the eyes of the world, but through the gaze of God. Let this be the season when you stop asking, "Why am I still alone?" and start declaring, "Thank God I am." Because when the wrong people leave your life, the right blessings begin to enter. And many of those blessings aren't people. They are peace, clarity, direction, and power. You don't always need someone beside you. You need God inside you. You don't need validation from a partner. You need confirmation from God. You don't need to be desired by others. You need to be directed by your Creator. Walk this journey with your head held high, not in arrogance but in confidence. Not because people approve of you but because God walks with you. Not because you have all the answers, but because you finally know where to look for them. No more searching for love that was never meant to last. No more begging for attention that fades with moods. No more trading your peaceful companionship. You are not alone. You are aligned. Aligned with your purpose, aligned with your calling, aligned with your destiny. You are walking through a narrow path, but it leads to wide blessings. The world cannot understand this kind of peace. They will say you're too selective, too distant, too holy. Let them talk. Because the more you walk with God, the less you care about fitting into places He never designed for you. You've cried long enough. You've questioned yourself long enough. You've blamed yourself long enough. Now is the time to rise and embrace the divine solitude that protects the sacred space where God is pouring into you. Let no one invade it. Let no one devalue it. Let no one disturb it. Living alone surpasses any relationship that disconnects you from the presence, purpose, and peace of God. And when you finally understand this truth deep within your soul, you will stop seeing this season as a valley and begin to see it as a mountain, a place of strength, vision, and divine encounter. You are not waiting for your life to start. You are living it right now. And the God who holds your future stands beside you in your present. Be still. Be strong. Be faithful. Because the one who walks alone with God carries more power than 1,000 who follow the crowd. I tell you now, there is a sacred strength that only emerges when you stop relying on others to carry what only God was meant to hold. When you stop searching for someone to complete what God has already made whole within you, a divine fire awakens. It is not pride. It is not arrogance. It is holy confidence. This confidence comes from being refined in solitude and anointed in silence. Too many souls today are weary, not because they are alone, but because they are carrying relationships God never authorized. They fight battles in homes built on sand. They pray for peace in unions forged from loneliness rather than purpose. But when you dare to walk alone with God, you step out of chaos and into clarity. You exchange the noise of emotional warfare for the calm of divine wisdom. Some of the greatest revelations in your life will come not when you're surrounded, but when you're separated. Separation is not always rejection. Sometimes it's redirection. Sometimes divine filtration. God removes what you thought you needed so He can reveal what you were always meant to be. Alone does not mean abandoned. Alone means chosen. Alone means set apart. Alone means sanctified for a greater assignment. The world will say you're too picky. Let them say it, because you do not belong to the world. You belong to God. And what God is shaping in you is too precious to be placed in the hands of just anyone. When you live alone and aligned with God, your standards rise, not because you think you're better, but because you finally know your worth. You no longer accept surface love when you were created for something sacred. You cannot build a divine future while holding on to what God is pruning away. Every relationship not rooted in truth becomes a trap. Every union that drains your spirit is a detour from your destiny. You were not called to confusion. You were not designed for dysfunction. You were crafted in the image of divine order. That's why your spirit grieves when you settle. That's why your peace vanishes when you ignore God's voice. Because something within your soul knows this is not the path for you. Living alone is where you begin to hear the quiet affirmations of your Creator. It's where you recognize that your spirit does not need to chase. It needs to rest. It needs to be still and trust that what is meant for you will find you without you losing yourself to obtain it. You do not need to manipulate, perform, or compromise your values just to be noticed. God sees you. God knows you. And when He is enough, nothing else feels like a lack. You don't need a partner to be faithful. You don't need a relationship to be righteous. You don't need a title to be valuable. You don't need another person to give you the courage to obey God. Because when God becomes your foundation, your heart no longer crumbles when others leave. Your joy no longer fades when others change. You become unshakable not because life is easy, but because your soul is firmly anchored. Let the world glorify companionship. Let the world worship romantic entanglements, but you glorify the solitude God has given you. In it He is shaping you. In it He is strengthening you. In it He is preparing you to carry blessings that cannot be handled with weak hands or wounded hearts. You cannot receive the fullness of God's promises while your soul is fractured by broken attachments. Hear me now. Living alone teaches you to discern the difference between what feels good and what is truly good. It sharpens your vision. It purifies your motives. It helps you see past charm and hear the truth. Because not everyone who speaks well is sent by God. Not everyone who desires your heart has the strength to protect it. Not everyone who smiles at your light knows how to honor it. That is why God must isolate you before He elevates you. So your heart is no longer deceived by flattery. So your spirit no longer craves what once broke you. So you don't mistake counterfeit affection for divine connection. Because what comes from God will never ask you to betray yourself. What comes from God will never silence your spirit. What comes from God will never compromise your peace. Living alone is where true cleansing happens. It's where spiritual toxins are drained. It's where emotional dependencies are broken. It's where the lies you believed about yourself are uprooted. Lies that told you you weren't worthy unless someone claimed you. Lies that told you you were unlovable unless someone pursued you. Lies that whispered your value depends on how needed you are, not on how aligned you are with God. But when you finally allow those lies to die in the furnace of solitude, you rise. And when you rise, the right people can no longer manipulate you. The wrong people no longer appeal to you. You begin to attract not what your wounds crave, but what your healed soul truly requires. That is what God is preparing in you now. That is why He has called you into a season of separation, not to crush you, but to crown you. You must walk through this fire alone, so that when you emerge, you will no longer be forged by fear, but by faith. You must sit in this stillness so the voice of God is no longer drowned out by the noise of the world. And when you emerge, because you will carry a power that does not depend on people. A joy that is not tied to circumstances. A peace that no human being can give or take away. Oh, what a powerful place that is to walk through life, knowing that your contentment is not borrowed and your value is not conditional. Your spirit is not swayed by the changing winds of human affection, but is rooted, grounded, and alive in the presence of the One who formed you from dust and breathed His own breath into your lungs. Now, hear this deep and holy truth. When God strips you of the noise of people, it is because He is bringing you into the sound of purpose. When He removes certain relationships, it's not to abandon you in the wilderness, but to lead you to the mountain of revelation. God does not take away what you need. He removes what you cling to so you can finally cling to Him. He separates you not to punish your soul, but to sanctify it. Because some destinies are too sacred to be shared with unclean hands and unguarded hearts. You must reach a place in your spirit where you say, even if no one walks with me, I will walk with God. You must come to the point where you no longer need everyone's agreement to follow the truth burning within your soul. The closer you draw to God, the more misunderstood you may become, the more focused you are, the more the crowd thins out. That is not loss. It is alignment. It is God sifting out what cannot accompany you into the next level of your life. This world will always try to convince you that being alone means lacking something. But that is a lie, spoken by those who have never tasted the fullness of walking in divine communion with the Almighty. There is a joy no earthly bond can replicate. There is a peace that no conversation, companionship, or company can replace. When God becomes your source, you no longer chase what drains you. You protect what feeds you. You guard what lifts you. You nurture what aligns with the will of the Most High. So many spend years in relationships that feel like prisons. Their laughter is forced. Their smiles are masks. Their hearts are heavy. Why? Because they chose connection over conviction. They chose not to be alone, and in doing so forfeited their divine assignment. But when you choose God over the crowd, quiet over compromise, and growth over gratification, then you begin to truly live. God cannot fill a heart already crowded. He cannot move fully in a life cluttered with counterfeit alliances. You must be willing to empty your hands of what is not from Him, so He can pour into you what cannot be bought, replaced, or taken. The world may call you strain. Your family might not understand. Friends may call you cold. Let them, because you are not living for the applause of people. You are living for the approval of the One who holds the breath in your lungs. Living alone is not emptiness. It is preparation, and preparation is always a private journey. No one sees the caterpillar inside the cocoon. No one hears the stretching, the struggle, the transformation. But when it emerges glorious, graceful, free, it no longer crawls in the dirt. It flies. That is exactly what God is doing in you. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are not stuck in a holding pattern. You are in a holy process. Some of you are in a divine pause, and it is testing your patience. You long for companionship, for closeness, for someone to speak to your soul. But understand this, when you wait on God, He gives you not what your emotions crave, but what your spirit truly needs. He does not work on your timetable. He operates in perfect timing. He withholds not to harm you, but to preserve you. And when He finally moves, everything that seemed like a delay will reveal itself as protection. Don't despise this alone time. Use it. Dive deep into your identity. Expand your understanding. Detox from the lies culture has fed you. Purge your mind of expectations that never align with God's voice. Tear down every false idol you've raised: romance, approval, beauty, validation, and let God rebuild you with truth. This is where real maturity happens. This is where your discernment sharpens like a sword. This is where your vision clears and you begin to see with spiritual eyes. You start to recognize that not every smile is sincere, that not every hand extended is a blessing, that not every presence in your life is meant to stay. And so you stop holding on to what is fading. You stop watering what is already withered. You stop chasing what God has already removed because now you know that anything you have to beg to remain is not from God. When you live alone and walk with God, your spirit becomes sensitive. You no longer move based on feelings. You move by divine direction. You stop rushing because you trust that God's plan is better than your own. You stop comparing your journey to others because you realize what He has for you is uniquely crafted, set apart, and cannot be copied or stolen. You no longer seek attention. You walk with intention. You no longer chase love. You become love. The love rooted in God, centered in truth, and shielded by peace. Let the world do as it will. Let others settle. Let them enter relationships simply to avoid loneliness. But you be different. Be bold. Be set apart. Because when you finally understand the power of living alone with God, you stop seeing it as a temporary setback and begin to view it as a divine strategy. You don't just endure it, you embrace it. You don't just tolerate it, you treasure it. And from that place, God begins to pour into your spirit things the average person will never receive. Secrets, instructions, assignments. He begins to speak to you during the quiet hours of the night. He reveals traps you couldn't have seen. He aligns your steps so perfectly that no detour can throw you off course. And when you walk under that kind of divine protection, there's no room left for desperation, confusion, or fear, because living alone with God teaches you this unshakable truth. You're not waiting for someone to give you a name. You already have one. You're not waiting to be chosen. You were chosen when you were formed. You are not waiting to be rescued. You are already walking with the one who holds all power. Do not compromise your soul just to fill an empty chair. Do not silence your convictions just to maintain a relationship. Do not hide your light just to be accepted. You were not created to blend in. You were created to shine. And sometimes the cost of that light is solitude. But it is far better to shine alone with God than to be surrounded by shadows. So lift your head, strengthen your spine, guard your spirit, keep walking, walk with the confidence of one who has been called, walk with the wisdom of one who has been refined, walk with the peace of one who needs nothing but God. Because when you walk with God alone, you never truly walk alone. You walk with purpose, clarity, power, and above all, you walk in truth. No relationship, no praise, no touch, no human affection will ever compare to the fullness of that sacred connection. And if your heart still trembles at the thought of walking alone, let me tell you, what you call loneliness, God calls leadership. What you feel as isolation, God uses as elevation. There is no voice louder, no hand stronger, no presence more comforting than God's when He chooses to deal with you privately. So stop asking, why am I alone? And begin asking, what is God trying to show me in this silence? Because the sacred moments when the world grows quiet are the very moments when eternity begins to speak. It is in the aloneness that God purges your dependence on the temporary. He burns away your need for approval. He detoxes your heart from those who only stayed near you for their own benefit. He begins to rewire your desires so that you no longer crave shallow validation, but hunger for holy transformation. And let me tell you, when that process begins, it won't always feel comfortable. Refinement never comes without fire. But when it is complete, you will emerge not fragile, but fortified, not empty, but equipped, not ashamed of your season alone, but thankful for it. You will begin to thank God for every unanswered call. You will begin to praise Him for the doors that never open. You will rejoice over the people who left, because now you see it was not rejection. It was a rescue. You were not abandoned. You were advanced because God knows what your future holds. and He will not allow you to carry dead weight into a living promise. Some people only came into your life to teach you a lesson, not to walk with you into your destiny. And when their time expires, their presence becomes poison. That's why God had to remove them. That's why He had to separate you, because He loves you too much to let your destiny be delayed by people who don't even understand your value. Let the tears fall, but don't let them blind you. Let the ache come, but don't let it define you. Every tear you cry in private, God collects. Every moment you sit in silence, wondering what comes next, God sees. And in due time, He will reward your obedience, not with distractions, but with divine direction, not with just any companionship, but with a peace so deep it drowns out desires for what is less than holy. There is something fierce and majestic about a soul that has learned to be alone with God and still be whole. When you no longer search for someone to fix you because you've learned to sit in the presence of the one who made you. When you no longer beg for attention because you know your name is already written in a higher place. When you no longer chase fleeting connections because you are rooted in a relationship that cannot be broken. God is not simply trying to comfort you in this season. He is calling you to mastery. Mastery over your emotions. Mastery over your distractions. Mastery over your past. This is not just about being alone. It's about being consecrated. You have been set apart for something uncommon, something eternal. And if it cost you temporary affection to walk in eternal purpose, so be it. This world is full of shallow waters. But you were created for the deep, and deep cannot walk with shallow. Purpose cannot walk with confusion. Peace cannot walk with chaos. You must choose. Will you settle for the presence of people or pursue the presence of God? Will you compromise your calling to avoid the discomfort of being alone? Or will you stand in the fire of transformation until what is divine begins to rise in you? Make no mistake, solitude is not weakness. It is warfare. It is where the spiritual battle is fought and won. It is where demons are cast out of your thoughts. Wounds are stitched by unseen hands. Lies lose their power, and truth gains its voice. It is where the divine armor of clarity, strength, and resilience is fastened onto your spirit. You cannot carry your calling while addicted to being liked. You cannot walk with God while being led by the hand of approval. You cannot speak truth and be embraced by everyone. The path of the called is narrow and often lonely, but it is sacred. And if you dare to walk this path, you will discover that what you thought you lost is nothing compared to what God is building within you. The more you embrace the silence, the more you will hear, not with your ears but with your spirit. You'll begin to discern the difference between what merely sounds good and what truly is good. You'll start to recognize the subtle voice of God guiding you, not only in big decisions but also in the quiet moments of each day. In that closeness, you will no longer fear being alone because you have tasted the fullness of His companionship. You will stop seeking to be understood because you will be satisfied with being known by God. You will cease trying to explain your worth because you now walk in the confidence that your worth is non-negotiable. You will stop chasing what is convenient and begin walking toward what is consecrated. Let the silence be your sanctuary. Let the stillness be your teacher. Let the emptiness be the space where God fills you with new oil, fresh fire, and unshakable truth. Because when you emerge from this season, you will no longer walk as who you once were. You will walk as one who has been with God, one who carries something sacred, one who speaks with weight, one who walks with fire. From that moment forward, you will never again accept what is beneath your calling. You will never return to places that once made you feel small. You will never trade your peace for companionship. You will guard what God has built in you. You will steward the quiet place as sacred ground where your soul learned to breathe. So if God has called you into the shadows for a time, trust that the light is coming, and when it does, it will not just shine on you, it will shine through you. But until that day arrives, walk faithfully in the quiet, dance in the silence, stand boldly in the solitude, because you are not merely living alone. You are living chosen, living guarded, living awakened. This is your season, not of absence, but abundance, not of lack, but learning, not of sorrow, but strength. And when you walk with God, you discover that even in solitude, your soul lacks nothing because He is there. He has always been there, and He will never leave you alone. So now I speak to your spirit with fire and clarity. If God has called you to walk alone, walk with boldness. If He has stripped away every distraction, praise Him for the purification. If He has placed you in a quiet season, thank Him for the holy stillness. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are not less. You are being shaped by the very hands that formed the stars and commanded the oceans. What you gain in solitude cannot be taken away by the world because it was never given by the world in the first place. When you walk alone with God, you move in divine rhythm. You walk in sacred alignment. You walk not in fear, but in authority. People may turn away, but if you have God, you lack nothing. In Him is your peace. In Him is your worth. In Him is your direction. And in Him your soul finds its home. So move forward, not as someone who is alone, but as someone accompanied by the eternal presence of God. Your heart is guarded, your future is prepared, and your solitude is not a sentence, it is a sanctuary. Embrace it, honor it. Let your life become the living testimony that living alone with God truly surpasses any relationship this world could ever offer. My dear brothers and sisters, today I want to speak directly to your soul. Every person reaches a point in life where they must choose between pain and purpose. Some wounds cut deeply. Some betrayals are so grievous, so vile, so poisonous that forgiving them is not only unwise, it is unholy. Yes, I said it. There are betrayals you must never forgive, not because God desires you to live with bitterness or hold grudges, but because forgiving certain betrayals means inviting the serpent back into the garden. Some serpents were never meant to return. These are not mere mistakes. They are intentional attacks from the enemy carried out by people wearing masks of friendship, family, and trust. There is a holy anger, my friends, that rises when you have been betrayed at the deepest level. This is not about petty arguments, misunderstandings, or human faults. This is about betrayals that shatter souls, alter destinies, and break spirits. I speak of those who smile in your face while digging the grave of your purpose. Those who knew your heart, saw your vulnerability, and deliberately stabbed it, not once, but repeatedly with intention, calculation, and cruelty. And when you feel that pain, do not dismiss it. That pain is a divine signal from God. It is a trumpet from heaven declaring this cannot be ignored. This cannot be excused. This must never happen again. The first betrayal you must never forgive is the violation of your sacred trust by someone who knew your soul and chose to destroy it. God grants you discernment for a reason. When you open your life to someone, be it a spouse, a friend, or family member, you are not merely sharing time. You are sharing spirit. You are inviting them into the garden of your inner world, the place where God walks with you in the cool of the day. When someone enters that garden and burns the trees, poisons the well, and breaks the peace, God views it as trespassing, not only against you, but against his sanctuary. To forgive that without repentance, without justice, without divine correction, is to tell God your garden means nothing. Friend, there is a line, and when crossed, forgiveness turns to foolishness. God never called you to be a doormat in mercy's name. He never called you to allow wolves to devour your sheep. He calls you to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, but never blind, deaf, or naive. When someone violates your deepest trust and mocks the ruin they cause, when they use your past, your secrets, your kindness as weapons to control, humiliate, or destroy you, that is not weakness. That is wickedness, and wickedness, when accepted and repeated, must never re-enter your inner sanctuary. God does not forgive the unrepentant. Why should you? The second betrayal you must never forgive is when someone deliberately obstructs what God is building in your life. Listen carefully. Some people come into your life as agents of sabotage. Not everyone who walks beside you is walking for you. Some are sent to observe you. Some are sent to slow your progress. Some come to sow confusion, speak death over your dreams, whisper doubt into your anointing, and drain your energy with endless drama until you are too weary to enter the door God has opened. And when you realize that someone you loved, helped, and prayed for is actually poisoning your purpose, do not mistake it for a simple mistake. This is a betrayal of divine destiny. Understand this. God cares not only about your survival, but is deeply committed to your assignment. When someone interferes with the divine timing of your purpose, distracts you intentionally from the work God entrusted to you, manipulates your time, exploits your generosity, or turns your path into a battlefield, you must recognize that the devil is working through them, and you, chosen one, are not called to remain silent while your calling is crucified. You are called to rise. You are called to separate. You are called to protect what God is birthing through you. Forgiving such betrayal, while the enemy still speaks through them, is like giving a thief the keys to your house. God may desire their redemption one day, but that redemption cannot come at the cost of your purpose. The third betrayal you must never forgive targets your relationship with God. Yes, there are people who enter your life not to support your walk with God, but to sever it. There are relationships that appear charming, but are rooted in destruction. They come bearing compliments, comfort, even companionship, but underneath lies a demonic agenda. They pull you away from prayer, mock your convictions, and plant seeds of doubt. Suddenly, you stop fasting as you once did. Suddenly, your faith grows cold. Suddenly, you excuse what you once rebuked. This is no coincidence. This is a spiritual attack. God did not rescue you from the pit only for someone to drag you back in. If someone deliberately pulls you away from God's path, encourages sin, compromises your standards, or defies your conscience, you must recognize it as abomination. Forgiving such betrayal, when the person remains unrepentant and proud, is a betrayal against God Himself. You do not play with what is sacred. You do not let someone touch the holy fire of your connection to the Most High and then say it is acceptable. No, my friend, this is not just betrayal. This is spiritual treason. Some betrayals are not meant to be healed. They are meant to be remembered. So you never return. You never repeat the pain. You never open that door again. You can move forward. You can release the burden. You can even pray for their souls. But do not confuse closure with reconciliation. Do not mistake peace for partnership. Do not invite the serpent back to the table and call it forgiveness. God is not mocked. He sees what was done, and he will act in his perfect time. But you must protect the temple. You must guard the promise. You must remain holy. Stay focused and keep separate from the betrayal that threatens your becoming. Let others call you bitter. Let them label you unforgiving. But God knows your heart. He sees your wounds and honors your boundaries. Not all forgiveness looks like reunion. Sometimes forgiveness means closing the door, throwing away the key, and never looking back. Sometimes the holiest thing you can do is say, God, I release them to you, but I will not walk with them again because your destiny matters. Your peace matters. Above all, your walk with God must be guarded at all costs. Some people you love from a distance. Some apologies you will never receive. Some explanations will never come. And that's okay. God's justice is perfect. His timing is flawless. His vengeance is holy. He does not need your help to repay what was done, but he does need your obedience to separate yourself. If you continue holding on to those who hurt you, you are telling God that your loyalty to people is greater than your loyalty to your purpose. That cannot be. It is not hatred to walk away. It is not bitterness to protect your soul. It is not revenge to never forget those who tried to destroy what God gave you. It is wisdom. It is clarity. It is spiritual maturity. Let them talk, let them lie, let them twist the story, but you stand firm. You keep your eyes on God. You keep your feet on holy ground. And you guard your life like the precious vessel it is, because God lives in you. His Spirit whispers to you, and his future flows through you. If they betrayed your sacred trust, interfered with your destiny, or attacked your relationship with God, then the message from heaven is this: never again. You may bless them in prayer. You may wish them no harm, but you will never hand them your soul again. You will never let them come close to what is holy. You will never give them the power to wound you twice, because you have learned, you have grown, and now you walk with God with eyes wide open, with armor on, with fire in your bones and truth on your tongue. The season of blind forgiveness is over. The time for holy boundaries has begun. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them mislabel you. You are not hard. You are not heartless. You are healed. You are holy. You are no longer available for betrayal disguised as love. You don't owe anyone access to your peace. You don't owe anyone the right to hurt you again. You owe God your obedience, your purity, your calling, and God is pleased when you choose him over emotional manipulation. He is honored when you protect what he has given you, and he will always vindicate those who stand firm in truth. Let me share something deeper, something many shy away from. God never required you to make peace with destruction. Yes, there is a time for reconciliation, but there is also a time for separation. There comes a divine moment when God says enough. You have shed enough tears. You have bent over backward enough times. You have given enough chances. Now protect what remains. Continuing to allow the betrayer access to your life at this point is not mercy. It is disobedience. It is saying to God, I know better than you, when he has clearly shown you their heart. Friend, betrayal is not merely an offense. It is a revealer. It reveals who someone truly is. Not when all is calm, but when your purpose begins to rise. Some people love you when you are weak. Some adore you when you are beneath them. But when God's favor surrounds you, when your life elevates, when God's light shines brighter, watch who changes. That change is no accident. That is betrayal, waiting for its moment. When it surfaces, do not ignore it. Do not sugarcoat it. God gave you eyes not only to see beauty, but to detect danger. Don't be fooled. Betrayal often wears the mask of loyalty. It comes with smiles. It offers support that lasts only as long as you serve their interests. But God knows the heart. God sees what you cannot. And when He reveals the truth, even if it crushes you or shakes your foundation, thank Him. Thank Him for stopping the lie. Thank Him for pulling back the curtain, because it is better to cry from clarity than to dance in deception. It is better to be alone in truth than surrounded by those who mean you harm. Listen closely. Some of you are still bleeding from wounds God intended for you to walk away from. You're trying to mend relationships with enemies of your peace. You're trying to keep toxic bridges standing when God has already set them ablaze. Why rebuild what God has destroyed? Why explain yourself to those who have used your honesty against you? That burden is not yours. You were not born to be a martyr to betrayal. You were not created to be a sacrifice for others to feel powerful. God has called you to be bold. God has called you to be strong. God has called you to guard your purpose like a warrior guards a gate. Yet some of you have been swayed by religion, culture, and the guilt imposed by others into believing you must forgive everything. Let me remind you, God never asked you to be naive. He never told you to welcome the snake back into the garden. The serpent was cast out, not reconciled. The betrayer who refuses to change poses a threat to your destiny. God doesn't merely ask you to forgive. He commands you to protect your soul. And sometimes protecting your soul means closing the door and keeping it closed. There is a reason God said to be separate. There is a reason He calls His chosen ones out of toxic cycles, unholy alliances, and patterns of abuse and deception. Your calling cannot thrive in confusion. Your gift cannot grow in a garden overrun with weeds. Your purpose cannot be fulfilled while you constantly dodge knives from those who sit at your table. Betrayal must be recognized. But more than that, it must be met with wisdom, strength, and unwavering loyalty to God. Let us go deeper. Betrayal isn't always in words or actions. Sometimes betrayal is silence. It is when someone who claimed to love you watches you be destroyed and says nothing. It is when the one who could have defended your name chooses comfort over courage. When you see this, don't dismiss it. Silence in the face of injustice is agreement. Anyone who stands by and allows your reputation, heart, and peace to be torn apart is as guilty as the one who committed the act. Do not excuse them. Do not lessen the weight of what they allowed, because God sees everything. He sees who applauded you in public and cursed you in secret. He sees who watched you drown and walked away. That too is betrayal. What does God say about betrayal? He says, I will repay. He says, vengeance is mine. He says, touch not my anointed. These are not suggestions. They are warnings. When people violate this warning, you are not called to rescue them from their consequences. You are not called to suffer so they can sleep peacefully. You are called to let God handle it. But you must also step aside. You cannot keep dancing with danger and expect deliverance. You cannot keep entertaining the betrayer and expect peace. God will not deliver what you defend. So I challenge you today. Open your eyes. Examine your life with the discernment of one who fears God, who in your life is sent to build, who is sent to destroy, who aligns with your purpose, and who slowly kills your potential. Asking these questions is not judgment. It is obedience. God is not calling you to hatred. He is calling you to honor. Honor the purpose He placed in you. Honor the calling that came at the price of your pain. Honor the boundaries that protect your peace. And understand this, letting go of betrayal does not mean you have failed. It means you have finally grasped your assignment. Some people are seasonal, not eternal. Some relationships were never meant to cross the threshold into destiny. The longer you cling to what God is trying to remove, the more your blessings will be delayed. Do not allow sympathy to become a trap. Do not let your love for people outweigh your loyalty to God. When you stand before God on Judgment Day, those betrayers will not stand with you. It will be you and the choices you made. And now, as one who trembles before the presence of God, I tell you, this is the moment to take your soul seriously. This is not the time to be casual about your circle. This is not the season to be sentimental toward those who once held your hand, but secretly planned your downfall. God is not mocked. He is not unaware. He is not confused about who truly stands with you and who is pretending. When God reveals those working against the purpose He placed in you, your response becomes a test of faith. Will you cling to the comfort of what once was, or will you rise in holy courage and walk away to protect what is to come? Every chosen person faces a moment when God shakes the foundation not to destroy you, but to reveal who built on sand. He allows the storm to come so you can see whose love was genuine and whose presence was merely performance. Do not mourn this exposure. Thank God for it. He has allowed the mask to slip so your purpose will not be strangled. He let the snake hiss so you would not embrace it again. When He reveals the truth, you are not called to cover it up. You are called to separate. Separation is not disobedience. It is sacred obedience. When God commands separation, He is setting you apart to preserve the anointing on your life. Friend, destiny does not wait for those undecided. Purpose cannot flourish where confusion reigns. The Spirit of God will not dwell where betrayal is tolerated. If you allow the betrayer to remain, you are choosing comfort over calling. You are choosing nostalgia over the new things God is bringing forth. Sometimes the reason you cannot find peace is because you are sleeping beside what God has already rejected. You are holding conversations with people God has silenced in heaven, and in doing so you block the flow of favor. Hear this truth without apology. God will remove before He rewards. God will isolate before He elevates. Elevation requires clean hands, and clean hands cannot hold contaminated souls. The choice is yours. Will you keep the betrayer's memory alive in your heart, or will you give that space to God? Will you carry resentment that poisons, or will you empty yourself and let God fill you with His fire? But understand this, delayed obedience is still disobedience. I know it hurts. I know it aches to walk away from those you prayed for, protected and carried through their brokenness. Yet, if their betrayal becomes a pattern, if their actions continue to drain your strength, distort your focus, and dim your spirit, you must choose God over history. You must say, God, if you're not in that relationship, I don't want it. If you're not in that conversation, I won't speak it. If you're not in that environment, I won't stay there. This is the narrow path. This is the way of the faithful. This is what it means to truly belong to God. Some of you have been spiritually tied to people who never honored your presence. They came to take, not give, to distract, not build. And every time you tried to forgive and let them back in, they repeated the cycle. That is not your failure. That is your wake-up call. And when God sends that call, don't hit the snooze button. Don't talk yourself out of discernment. Don't allow the betrayer's charm to override what God has made clear, because discernment is a gift, and ignoring it insults the giver. Hear this clearly. You are not unloving for setting boundaries. You are not arrogant for protecting your peace. You are not vengeful for choosing not to return to what broke you. That is wisdom. That is spiritual maturity. That is a sign that you truly fear God more than man. Fearing God means you take seriously what He takes seriously. He takes your purpose seriously. He takes your soul seriously. He takes your future seriously. So why would you treat these lightly if they betrayed you once, intentionally, repeatedly, and without remorse? They are not your friend. They are an assignment from the adversary. And the sooner you stop sugarcoating it, the sooner you will step into freedom. The enemy does not need your complete destruction to win. He only needs you to remain bound to the wrong people. If he cannot steal your gift, he will surround it with voices that dilute it. If he cannot steal your purpose, he will bury it in drama. If he cannot extinguish your light, he will distract you until you forget why you were lit in the first place. So be bold, be decisive, align yourself with the authority of God. Declare, I am no longer available to betrayal. I will no longer give access to what costs me tears, time, and spiritual warfare to build. I will no longer justify evil for the sake of keeping peace. I will walk in truth even if I walk alone. And let me tell you this, when you take that stand, God will honor you. He will replace every counterfeit with the genuine. He will raise up those who pour into you. He will bring companions who walk with integrity. He will restore what the betrayer tried to kill, because God doesn't just remove, He renews. But He cannot renew what you refuse to release. So today, let this be your moment of divine clarity. Let this be the day you stop calling betrayal a misunderstanding. Let this be the day you stop apologizing for your growth. Let this be the day you stop shrinking to keep disloyal people comfortable. Let this be the day you allow God to purify your space. What lies ahead requires a heart that is clean, a spirit that is focused, and a life rooted solely in God. And know this, the betrayer may still speak your name. They may twist the truth. They may pretend to be the victim. Let them. Their words have no power over the one whose life is sealed by God. Your task is not to argue. Your task is not to retaliate. Your task is to rise, to live, to thrive, and to walk so powerfully with God that no weapon formed against you can come near, because God holds the final word. God has the final say. And when you walk in that kind of confidence, no betrayal can hinder what He has ordained. Let this truth settle deeply in your bones. Betrayal does not delay God's plan. It reveals it. It exposes dead weight. It uncovers hidden motives. It shakes off shadows that have quietly fed on your light. And though you may feel heartbroken in the moment, with tears flooding your eyes and your spirit trembling under disappointment, understand this. God is not the author of confusion. God is the revealer of all things hidden in darkness. He allows betrayal to surface not to break you but to free you. To free you from false alliances. To free you from the lure of familiar poison. To free you from trusting what He has already condemned. Sometimes the greatest mercy God shows is the heartbreak that pulls you out of a snare, because God sees what you cannot. He knows the conversations behind your back. The plots formed in secret, the intentions masked by smiles and soft words. He watches what you miss. And when he opens your eyes, it is not so you will weep endlessly, but so you can walk wisely. God does not expose just to cause pain. He exposes so you can choose truth. And when truth is revealed, you must not return to what lies have disguised. There is no peace in tolerating treachery. There is no holiness in remaining silent while the enemy operates within your inner circle. God did not give you discernment to ignore it. He did not give you wisdom to sit silently while your destiny is drained. You are called to act, to draw the line, to separate the holy from the profane, to protect the purpose He placed in your spirit. And let me tell you this, betrayal that repeats is not a trial, it is a pattern. When God shows you the pattern, He demands that you break it. Break soul ties. Break emotional manipulation. Break the illusion that you are responsible for fixing what someone else continues to destroy. God is not calling you to be the fixer of broken people who refuse to change. He is not asking you to drain your spirit trying to keep someone in your life who was sent to sabotage it. Some people are agents of chaos, smooth in speech but deadly in action. And when God says enough, your only response must be obedience. No hesitation, no negotiation, just obedience. The longer you linger, the longer you delay your deliverance. Let's go deeper. Some betrayals are generational. They wear the face of family, but carry the poison of resentment. They smile at your progress, but scheme behind your back. You've been taught to endure it, to call it loyalty, to label it love. But hear this clearly. God is not bound by dysfunctional traditions, but was bound by dysfunctional traditions. He does not require you to remain in chains, simply because those chains come wrapped in familiar names. If a relationship violates your peace, disrespects your purpose, and dishonors your calling, it must be released. You honor God more by walking away than by staying in what corrupts you. You may say, "But I've known them for years." Listen, longevity is not loyalty. Just because someone has been in your life a long time, doesn't mean they belong in your life for the long haul. Some people walk beside you for years, but never truly walk with you. They stand near you, but never stand for you. When God reveals this truth, do not explain it away. Do not cover it with excuses. Align yourself with God's will above all else. The longer you let the betrayer occupy space in your life, the more you grieve the Spirit of God who longs to bring forth something new. There is a sacred silence God gives after betrayal. The kind of silence where He whispers, "Now that they're gone, I can finally speak." In that silence, you will find clarity like never before. You will remember who you are. You will feel the weight lift. You will realize how much confusion, fear, and anxiety came from keeping the wrong voices near your soul. Sometimes it's not what you're doing wrong, it's who you're listening to. When God removes the betrayer, He removes the noise so you can finally hear Him. You don't need a crowd to be chosen. You don't need applause to be validated. You don't need familiar faces around you to know you're on the right path. All you need is confirmation that you are walking in obedience to God. And if that walk means walking away from what once felt comfortable, then walk. If it means being misunderstood, then let them misunderstand. If it means being called cold, harsh, or unforgiving, let them speak. Because the approval of man can never compare to the reward of divine favor. Favor rests upon those who choose God's voice above every other sound. My beloved, let me remind you, God never forgets. He never overlooks what was done to you. He never ignores the betrayal, deceit, and manipulation you endured. But more importantly, He never forgets how you responded. When you choose righteousness over revenge, silence over slander, and boundaries over breakdowns, God records it all. He stores your tears, honors your restraint, and blesses your endurance. In His perfect timing, He will lift you up before those who tried to bury you, not to boast or gloat, but to reveal that His hand was upon you, even when their knives were in your back, and you must never look back. Do not return to what God has freed you from. Do not reopen doors God has closed. Do not listen to voices He has silenced. Your life is not in their hands. It is in God's. If He removed them, trust that it was for your good. What you lost through betrayal, He will repay in blessing. What was stolen in secret, He will restore in glory. What was broken through deception, He will rebuild in righteousness. But first, you must let go of bitterness. Let go of unanswered explanations. Let go of the questions that haunt your midnight prayers. Let go of the hope that one day they will say sorry. Whether they apologize or not, whether they understand or not, your healing does not depend on them. Your peace comes from God. Your future is in His hands. Your restoration begins the moment you stop waiting for the betrayer to offer closure and instead receive it directly from the one who sees all, knows all, and heals all. You are not abandoned. You are being aligned. You are not forsaken. You are being fortified. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. Betrayal did not end you. It awakened you. Now you rise not with revenge in your heart, but with vision in your eyes. You rise with purpose, peace, and a fire that betrayal cannot extinguish. You rise as a vessel carrying wisdom born from pain, clarity born from heartbreak, and strength born from walking alone with God. If you are hearing these words right now, it means God is drawing a divine line in your life, a line separating the old from the new, the betrayal from the blessing, the test from the triumph. And now you must decide. Will you continue to carry what God has already commanded you to release? Or will you stand, straighten your back, wipe your tears, and declare, I will no longer give betrayal a seat at my table, because the presence of God cannot fully settle where confusion and compromise are allowed to dwell. If you desire God's peace, you must first clear the space of hidden enemies and half-hearted companions. You need to make room for what is sacred, and sometimes that requires removing what is familiar. God is not calling you to live in constant suspicion, but He is calling you to walk in discernment. Discernment is not just about knowing who is against you. It's about having the courage to separate yourself from those who drain you, those who wear you down spiritually, and those who pretend to support you while secretly rejoicing in your setbacks. You must not only listen to their words, but also watch their fruits. For God said, you shall know them by their fruits, not by their flattery. When the fruit is rotten, don't keep it in your basket, hoping it will ripen later. Rotten fruit poisons everything it touches. When God reveals corruption to you, He is giving you a holy warning. Protect what He has planted in you. There is a depth of peace that you cannot find until you disconnect from what disturbs your spirit. Some of you have been asking God for peace, yet you refuse to let go of the chaos makers. You've been fasting, praying, seeking answers, but still holding conversations with those who thrive in disorder. And God is saying, it's not that I haven't answered you, it's that you haven't obeyed me. Peace comes through obedience. Protection comes through obedience. Some of the storms in your life are not from the enemy. They are from God trying to remove what you refuse to release. Betrayal leaves a mark, but it also leaves a mirror showing who you are without them. A mirror reflecting your own strength, a mirror reminding you of the calling you forgot, while carrying those who were never meant to accompany you. When that mirror of betrayal stands before you, do not shrink back or look away. Let it reveal, refine, and remind you that you are not who they said you were. You are not their opinions, their lies, or their distortions. You are God's, and you are becoming everything they tried to stop. Know this: betrayal is often a prophecy. It signals that something in your life is about to change, that elevation is near, promotion is coming, growth is inevitable. The betrayer was sent to interrupt, distract you just before the door opens, and confuse you before the breakthrough arrives. But if you pass the test, endure without bitterness, and walk away without revenge, God will honor your restraint. He will bless your hands, multiply your peace, and place you where the betrayer cannot reach. Sometimes betrayal is loud, a public act, a shameless wound. But more often it is subtle, a whisper, a subtle change in tone, a delay in loyalty, or a seed of doubt planted in others. If you are not attuned to God, you will miss these signs. That is why you must live sensitive to the Spirit of God. You must pray not just for blessings, but for clarity. Not just for open doors, but for divine detachment from those who serve as gateways to destruction. Each morning you must ask God, who is truly for me? Who is sent by you? And who do I need to release? Some are God's mercy disguised as heartbreak. Some are answers to prayers you forgot you prayed when you cried out for protection, begged for peace, whispered in exhaustion, God, if they are not from you, take them away. And God heard you. God moved. But when He removed them, you mistook it for abandonment. Let me tell you this. Sometimes the departure of a person is the arrival of God's will. Sometimes the silence of others is the sound of God's favor increasing in your life. He will subtract before He multiplies. He will prune before He prospers. And He will purify your surroundings before He pours out His next blessing. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it confuses you. But remember, God does not owe you explanations. He owes you His plan. And His plan is always good. Even when it feels like loss, injustice, or when the betrayer walks away without apology and seems to prosper, God remains in control. God keeps the final record. He is the one who balances the scales. He sees beyond today. When He removes someone, He is not taking something away. He is making space for something greater, purer, and aligned with your divine assignment. You must start to see betrayal not as the end of a story, but as the beginning of a new chapter. God will use betrayal to sharpen your vision. He will use it to deepen your wisdom. He will teach you to walk by discernment, not dependency. Many of you have depended too long on people who were never meant to be your foundation. You built your peace around their presence and your joy around their approval. But God is a jealous protector of your soul. When someone becomes a false pillar in your life, He will tear it down so that He alone becomes your strength. If someone has betrayed you and never returned with humility, never acknowledged their wrongdoing, never repented or changed, then you have no obligation to walk with them again. Forgiveness is not foolishness. Mercy is not forgetting. Love does not require spiritual blindness. God does not ask you to open the door to someone who burned down the house. He asks you to forgive so you won't be poisoned. But he never told you to pretend the fire never happened. The scar reminds you of the lesson. The pain reminds you of the need for protection. And the boundary proves you have learned. And if they say you're cold, you've changed. You don't love like you used to. Let them say it because you have changed. You should have changed. Pain is not meant to leave you the same. Betrayal is not meant to be endured passively. It is a turning point, a divine shaking, a holy interruption. You were never called to tolerate wickedness dressed in sentiment. You were called to rise above it, to step into the higher place God is drawing you toward. And if that place is too high for the betrayer to follow, so be it. Some journeys are meant to be walked without familiar faces. You must also understand that betrayal does not always look like slander. Sometimes it is neglect. Sometimes it is silence when you needed support. Sometimes it is watching your suffering while doing nothing. And sometimes it is the refusal to protect your name when others seek to destroy it. That too is betrayal. That too wounds the spirit. But even there, even in the absence of justice, God is still at work. God is still recording. God is still shaping your next season out of the ashes of this one. So do not mourn what God has moved. Do not water what God has uprooted. Do not revisit what God rescued you from. Betrayal was never it was the moment when heaven declared, no more delays, no more distractions, no more disobedience. Now walk into clarity, walk into healing, walk into purpose with no apologies. Walk with the authority of one who has been wounded but not weakened, betrayed but not broken, shaken but still standing. Because the greatest revenge is not vengeance, it's elevation. It is when God lifts you so high that those who tried to bury you must look up to see what they could not destroy. It is when God uses your obedience to silence every lie. It is when your peace becomes louder than their accusations, and it all begins with one decision to let go of what hurt you and hold on to what heals you. Only God can provide that kind of healing. Not people, not explanations, not apologies, only God. So lift your head, straighten your shoulders. You have survived what tried to destroy you. You have endured what others could not. Now God is about to usher you into a season where betrayal no longer has a voice, where loyalty is unquestioned, where your spirit is surrounded by alignment, not chaos. But before that blessing comes, you must be faithful to this final test. Walk away and don't look back, not in bitterness, but in boldness, not with hate, but with holy strength. What is coming cannot be contaminated by what betrayed you. What God is building in you is too sacred to be touched by what once tried to tear you apart. Stand firm in that truth. Speak from that place. Live with that clarity, and let your silence toward the betrayer become your loudest declaration that you now walk with God, and God alone. You have heard the truth, not from the voice of man, but from the depths of divine urgency. The time has come to stop nurturing wounds that were meant to be closed. The time has come to stop listening to the voices of those who through their betrayal prove they were never meant to walk the entire journey with you. This is the hour to align your spirit with God's will and release every tie, every soul, every connection that compromises your calling. Let betrayal be the evidence that God is transitioning you into something greater. Let it be the final push that drives you deeper into prayer than ever before. Let it purify your motives, deepen your faith, and sharpen your discernment. Do not see betrayal as a loss. See it as a gate, a threshold, a divine test, wrapped in pain, but holding the seed of your next elevation. What tried to destroy you will only become the platform upon which God builds your strength. So release the weight, close the chapter, dust off your soul, and walk forward, not timidly, but triumphantly. Let your scars testify to God's preserving power. Let your silence speak of inner peace. Let your steps declare to heaven and earth alike, I have chosen obedience over offense, discernment over deception, and God above all else. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are who God says you are, and no betrayal has the power to change that. The path is clear, the voice is calling, and God is with you. Walk on. Beloved brothers and sisters, open your hearts and listen carefully with spiritual discernment. Evil does not arrive with kindness. It does not knock with courtesy. It intrudes. It wears the mask of charm. Yet behind that mask lies a trap. It flatters, promises falsely, and hides beneath a veil of deceit. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It manipulates. It reshapes truth into a weapon of destruction. If your soul isn't anchored in the Lord, if your eyes aren't alert, and your heart not in tune with the Holy Spirit's whisper, you might confuse the serpent for a friend, and the destroyer for a redeemer. Those who walk in reverence and spiritual wisdom do not battle with earthly weapons. They don't fall prey to bitterness, retaliation, or fruitless arguments. They know that evil thrives in confusion, finds power in chaos, and watches for your outbursts to twist your witness. The wise stay calm. They remain rooted. They listen in silence, understanding that sometimes silence holds more power than any shout. At times stepping away requires more bravery than standing to fight. The wise don't waste breath explaining themselves to those who twist every word. They don't quarrel with hearts closed to truth. They understand some souls don't seek clarity. They seek control, dominance, and a way to steal your peace. If the enemy can't destroy you, he'll settle for distracting you. But those who discern will not be deceived. They bow before God in the secret place, long before they speak in public. Their decisions are led not by ego, but by spiritual clarity. That clarity discernment can only be born through prayer, patience, and deep communion with God. Listen closely. Not everyone who praises you is truly for you. Not every smile is safe. Not every relative aligns with your divine assignment. The wise are aware of this. They do not argue with snakes. They do not dine with betrayers. They remain watchful. They pray. They wait. And when the appointed time comes, they move with quiet resolve without announcing every step, because evil listens to. And when you reveal too much too soon, you invite battles you're not prepared to face. There is power in restraint. There is divine strength in stillness. And there is miraculous breakthrough when you surrender to God what your own hands cannot repair. The wise hold fast to this truth. They don't repay evil with evil. They don't play the enemy's game. Because once you enter his ground, no matter how pure your motives, you will not leave untouched. The wise entrust justice to the Lord. For when God fights on your behalf, the result is not chaos, not scandal, not confusion, but quiet, holy victory. And remember this, evil often wears a familiar face. Evil often wears a face of someone you once believed in. And when betrayal strikes that deeply, your first instinct may be to retaliate, to prove yourself, to defend your reputation. But the wise understand this. The most powerful response isn't noise, it's progress, it's peace. It's walking boldly into places they said you'd never reach. You don't need to raise your voice when God is raising you. You don't need revenge when God himself is preparing a table for you right in front of those who hope to see you fall. Keep moving. Keep praying. Keep believing. Because what God has blessed, no voice can undo. The wise walk with quiet assurance, not because they lean on their own strength, but because they trust in the one who sees it. All the whispers, the betrayal, the hidden sabotage, the schemes behind closed doors, they don't panic. They don't plead for validation. They understand that when God has chosen you, attacks may come, but defeat will not prevail. They stay prepared but never paranoid. They protect their peace, guard their strength, and discern when to speak and when to be still, because they're not led by emotions, but by divine instruction. The wise don't chase revenge. They seek release. They don't cling to grudges. They cast their pain before the Lord. They know bitterness is dangerous. It pollutes the soul, clouds the vision, and locks the heart in a prison of the past. Evil thrives on bitterness. It wants you trapped in the pain, stuck in the memory, replaying the betrayal again and again. But the wise, they close that door. They forgive not because the other person earned it, but because they themselves deserve freedom. They know forgiveness isn't a weakness. It's a mark of spiritual power. Forgiveness is cutting the cord that keeps you bound to the fire. It is choosing liberty instead of captivity. And listen well, wise people don't just react, they reflect. They don't erupt in moments of offense. They step back, they seek God's counsel, because one reckless reaction can destroy years of discipline. One debate with a fool can make you look like one. And wise people don't argue with fools. They don't engage in war with darkness. They let the fruit of their life speak louder than the opinions of their critics. They let integrity shine when words are twisted, because they know God will vindicate what others try to ruin. And the wise find peace in that promise. Wise people also understand divine timing. They don't rush to expose what is wrong. They wait for God to bring it into the light. They let the truth speak in its season. Because if you uncover evil before God's appointed time, you risk derailing your own blessing. But if you wait, if you trust God to peel back the masks, to reveal what was hidden, the truth will come out, and your silence will echo louder than any defense. That is the reward of the patient and the faithful. They wait for the unveiling only God can orchestrate. Because evil doesn't give up easily. It comes back wearing new faces, using new voices, trying new tactics. But wise people aren't caught by surprise. They don't place their trust in people. They don't chase applause. They aren't swayed by charm. They test the spirit behind the compliment. They discern the intent behind the smile. They discern the motives behind praise, because evil often uses compliments to gain your trust, only to later use poison to derail your purpose. Wise people aren't driven by a need for attention. They are grounded in God, and when your foundation is in Him, no storm can shake you. Betrayal doesn't break you. Delay doesn't destroy you. The wise protect their peace like sacred treasure, because it truly is. Peace isn't just the absence of noise, it's the nearness of God. It is the fruit of a disciplined mind and a heart guarded by truth. And evil will always try to steal that peace. Evil wants you angry, distracted, and depleted. But the wise know what their calling costs, and they will not pour their oil into battles God never assigned to them. They won't reply to every insult. They don't need to answer every attack, because they understand that true elevation flows from humility, not hostility. Those with wisdom understand the power of boundaries. They are not afraid to say no. They do not entertain what God has told them to walk away from. They don't stay stuck in toxic cycles out of guilt. They are not manipulated by counterfeit loyalty. They do not fear walking alone because they know they are never truly alone. God is with them, and that's more than enough. They don't need a crowd to feel confident. They don't crave applause to feel worthy. They don't seek validation from the very ones who once tried to break them. The wise let go not because they are weak, but because they understand. They walk away not out of fear, but because they are focused. They don't try to change evil by force. They don't waste prayers on hearts that have already hardened. They surrender such matters into God's hands because they know that trying to fix evil in their own strength will only wear them out. But when entrusted to God, there is room for justice, for healing, for lasting peace. And make no mistake, evil despises boundaries. It will mock your silence. It will question your distance. They are not moved by manipulative tears. They move only by truth, by spiritual conviction, by the whisper of the Holy Spirit. When God says enough, they obey, they act, they close the door and do not return because they understand this. Not every apology is genuine. Not every change is lasting. Some apologies are simply strategies to regain access and destroy you all over again. Wise people recognize patterns. They don't rely on words alone. They observe behaviors. They learn from the past. They heed the warning signs. They don't wait for the knife to strike twice. They exit the spaces where darkness is welcomed. They don't shrink their light to make shadows feel safe. And they never compromise who they are just to belong, where God never intended them to stay. They rise with purpose, they shine with grace, and they place the outcome fully in God's hands. There is a sacred strength found in stillness, a heavenly strength, the power to remain grounded while everything around you spins in turmoil. The wise do not panic when storms hit. They pray through it. They worship in the midst of it. They lean in to hear God's voice. And when He whispers, "Be still," they respond with obedience because they understand that stillness is not passivity. It's trust. It's faith declaring, "God, I won't take a step unless you lead. I won't raise my voice unless you give me words. I won't engage unless you say go." Let me tell you a truth this world rarely teaches. God reveals darkness before He removes it. That's why the wise don't dismiss red flags just because they appear wrapped in charm. They don't excuse what's wrong to keep a false sense of peace. When God opens their eyes, they don't close them again for the sake of comfort, because they know what it costs to ignore truth when God is speaking clearly. Evil doesn't always enter with horns. Often it walks in disguised as love, support, or companionship. But true discernment requires more than sight. It requires spiritual vision. That's why wise people don't just pray for comfort. They seek clarity. They don't grant access to their hearts simply because someone has history. They grant it based on discernment. Just because someone's been in your past doesn't mean they belong in your future. Loyalty to God will sometimes require releasing people who are no longer aligned with your purpose. God didn't call you to be admired. He called you to obey. And obedience may offend those who once benefited from your silence, your self-sacrifice, or your compromise. But the wise don't fear rejection. They fear stepping out of alignment with God. They choose God's approval over human applause every single time. Evil thrives where confusion lingers. It functions in half-truths, in hidden shadows, in emotional manipulation. But those with wisdom bring everything into the light, not with loud declarations, but with steady conviction. They do not twist truth to suit comfort. They do not allow the enemy to reshape what God has already spoken clearly. Wise people remain rooted in God's truth, even when it costs them relationships, platforms, or praise, because they know this. Compromise with darkness is never compassion, it is spiritual danger. You can't sip from a poisoned well and expect to be made whole. You can't entertain the presence of evil and expect your home to be filled with peace. The wise aren't reactive, they are intentional. They protect their thoughts, their hearts, and their spaces with prayerful care. They cleanse their circles not out of pride, but out of obedience. They walk away not to prove superior, but to preserve their assignment. They do not cling to darkness under the label of forgiveness. Yes, they forgive, but they remember what God has exposed. Forgiveness is commanded, but boundaries are wisdom. Even God sets limits. Even God closes doors. And if the Almighty Himself establishes boundaries, who are we to live without them? There is divine strength in being misunderstood when your heart is aligned with heaven. The wise do not run after explanations. They understand in God's hands, silence speaks louder than any flesh-driven defense. They trust that God sees what no one else sees, hears what's spoken behind closed doors, and knows how truth is being distorted. They don't need to defend their integrity because the Holy One defends them. And hear me clearly, when God steps in to defend you, it's not halfway, it's flawless. No lie will stand. No hidden scheme will succeed. No evil will prevail. The wise aren't blind to the darkness in this world. They are not swayed by charming words or impressive displays. They test everything by God's peace. They discern spirits. They examine intentions. They evaluate the fruit, not just the words, because anyone can say the right thing. But only those who walk with God produce lasting fruit. Evil can imitate light for a time, but it cannot maintain it. And the wise are patient enough to wait for the real harvest to reveal itself. They aren't pushed by pressure. They don't act out of emotion. They move deliberately, guided by the Spirit, not swayed by people. Do you know why evil fears the wise? Because they refuse to play its game. They won't fall for bait. They don't react to every provocation. Evil loses its grip when it cannot control your response. A heart ruled by God is untouchable to the enemy. A soul anchored in truth cannot be shaken. The wise are dangerous to darkness because they are not afraid to lose what God never intended them to hold. They are free, and nothing threatens evil more than a person fully surrendered to God's will and free from human control. Let's make this simple. Spiritual wisdom is not about intellect. It's about intimacy. It's not about how much you know. It's about how deeply you trust. When you walk closely with the Father, He refines your discernment. He gives you holy confidence. He quiets the urge to please people who were never meant to have influence in your life. God trains the wise to wait, to watch, and to walk in wisdom. They don't move from pride, pain, or fear, but from a posture of submission. There's a reason God told some of you to leave, and there's a reason why staying feels burdensome. Evil survives in places where fear silences truth. But the wise know when it's time to leave. They know how to shake the dust off and move on. They understand staying in a toxic place out of guilt isn't loyalty. It's disobedience. God is never in confusion. He's not present in manipulation. And He is not the voice that leaves you feeling ashamed, belittled, or afraid. The wise step away from anything that endangers their peace with God. Now lean in, because this is truth. Those who walk in evil often accuse others of the very things they themselves are guilty. They project, they shift blame, They twist perception, but the wise are not fooled by the performance. They don't respond to slander. They don't react to manipulation, gaslighting, or public smear attempts. They remain rooted. They stay faithful because they know this truth: time and God will speak for them. They don't have to raise their voice when God has already decreed the verdict. They don't need to plead their case when heaven is already in motion. And when the Almighty stands with you, no evil can prosper against you. The wise respond to evil with a strength the world cannot explain. They extend respect but not access. They give grace but not close proximity. They speak truth but never with malice, because their mission is not to harm the person but to honor God. They know how to preserve their integrity while creating space. They don't retaliate with vengeance. They return not to attack but to the feet of God. Because what they cannot handle, He can. What was hidden, He sees. What was whispered, He hears. And in the right time, He will bring all things into the light. Let this settle in your spirit. Evil knows how to test your patience, how to provoke your silence, and how to insult your intelligence, but it cannot overpower a heart strengthened by God. The wise don't fall into emotional traps or senseless confrontations. They understand some arguments are better left untouched. Some accusations are beneath response, because the moment you engage evil on its own terms, you give it access to your peace. But when your pace is aligned with God, stones may be thrown, but your foundation remains unshaken. Here's a deep truth. The most powerful thing a God-led soul can do is protect what the Lord has entrusted to them. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your heart. Not everyone should be privy to your emotions, your plans, your inner life. Evil feeds off access. Evil searches for gaps. And the truly wise, they know when to speak and when to stay quiet. They live with intentional restraint. They are not loud, but they are mighty, because they understand the real battle isn't out there. It's the war over your reactions, your thoughts, your peace. That's where victory is decided. And God gives power to those who surrender control and seek His timing. The wise never confuse peacekeeping with peacemaking. There is a difference. Peacekeeping avoids truth for comfort, but peacemaking confronts lies with love. It stands firm in grace. It does not make room for darkness in the name of being agreeable. God doesn't call His people to tolerate evil for the sake of politeness. He calls us to walk in truth with humility, with mercy, but also with unwavering conviction. The wise know this. Love without limits turns into exploitation. Kindness without discernment leads to harm. And mercy without justice becomes permission for wrongdoing. So they walk in holy balance, strong but not harsh, compassionate yet cautious, open in heart but not exposed to everything. They are firm in truth, guided by grace, and protected by the wisdom that only comes from walking closely with God. And let us always remember this. Those truly rooted in wisdom are never afraid of being misunderstood in their pursuit of righteousness. They are not enslaved by the desire to be liked. They do not crave approval. Their deepest longing is alignment with God, with truth, and with their divine purpose. This means they're willing to be seen as harsh by those who once thrived in the shadow of their silence. They're willing to lose counterfeit peace, if it means gaining authentic freedom, because their loyalty is not to comfort but to God. When the Lord speaks, when He instructs them to leave, to separate, to sever ties, the wise do not hesitate. They respond without delay. because they understand delayed obedience gives evil space to prepare snares. The wise stay forward focused. They know evil operates best when it drags you backward back into patterns you've broken, conversations you've outgrown, and wounds that should have already healed. And when God begins to elevate a soul, the enemy will always send distractions designed to derail. But the wise recognize the scheme. They don't spend their days trying to prove they've changed. They just keep changing. They don't argue with old versions of themselves. They keep building what God is doing next because they know this. The most powerful rebuttal to a lying tongue is a life transformed by truth. And hear this clearly. Evil's most dangerous weapon isn't always aggression. It's manipulation, the subtle twisting of truth, the seeding of doubt, the masking of intentions. But to the wise, God grants clarity. He gives them eyes to perceive what others overlook, hearts that discern what is hidden behind flattery, and a sensitivity to motives others try to hide. That's why they appear quiet, not passive but perceptive. They are watching. They are listening not to retaliate, but to discern. And when God gives the green light, they move not from fear but from revelation, not from panic but from divine insight. And once they move, they never need to glance back because they know God is already ahead of them. Sometimes God allows evil not to test your strength, but to refine your wisdom. Anyone can retaliate. Anyone can scream. Anyone can crumble under pressure. But it is the spiritually mature, the disciplined who remain still in the middle of chaos. That is the mark of true wisdom. Stable, deliberate, unshaken. Not because they've mastered life, but because they've surrendered it fully into God's hands. Evil has no grip on a soul anchored in divine order. No storm can undo them because their foundation isn't built on fleeting emotions, but on obedience to the voice of the Lord. They trust God's justice. And though divine justice may not be instant, it is always precise. God is never unaware. He is never late. His judgment is perfect in timing. And the wise have learned the holy discipline of waiting. Waiting without bitterness. Waiting without distraction. Waiting without letting hatred darken their hearts. Because they know this. God's justice may seem delayed, but it will never be denied. What was done in darkness will one day be answered in light. And when God moves, his work is full. It leaves no doubt, no question. Now, let me speak directly to your spirit. When you're walking with the Lord, your silence isn't surrender. Spiritual strategy. When you're led by God, turning the other cheek isn't weakness, it's self-mastery. It means you are aware of divine covering and hidden protection that watches over you day and night. Evil often misinterprets silence as defeat. But the wise know sometimes the loudest voice is peace. It's calmness. It's the unwavering life that refuses to be shaken by chaos. When you carry peace that surpasses understanding, evil has no grip, no doorway into your soul. Don't be afraid of walking alone when you walk away from darkness. Many are surrounded yet feel empty. But the one who walks closely with God walks in true companionship. The path of wisdom is often narrow. Not all will walk with you. Not all will understand your choices. Some may label you distant, harsh, or prideful. But God sees your heart. He knows your motives. And when you walk in righteousness, you walk in the favor of the only opinion that matters for eternity. Wise people don't feel the need to explain what God is doing in their lives. They just keep living it. They let their fruit speak. And they never confuse exposure with transformation. Exposing evil doesn't always bring change. Sometimes the wisest act is to walk away quietly without chaos, without needing the world to hear your pain. Because when God delivers you from toxicity, it's not your mission to gain validation. It's your assignment to heal. The wise choose healing over attention. They choose maturing over murmuring. They walk in humility, not because they're weak, but because they're submitted to a higher authority. Let this settle deep. If evil can't conquer you, it will try to cozy up to you. It will flatter. It will mimic transformation. It will claim admiration. But wise people test consistency, not apologies. They examine patterns, not promises. They hope for redemption, but they wait for real fruit, because they know wolves can look like lambs for a season. Evil can fake righteousness for a while, but truth always exposes what's hidden. And the wise have the patience to wait without forcing reconciliation, where God has already drawn the line. Now take this into your heart. The wise never let evil define who they are. They don't allow mistreatment to distort their identity. They remain kind, but discerning, loving but guarded. They understand wisdom isn't about becoming tougher. It's about becoming holier. They carry discernment like a sword, sharp, quiet, but prepared. They live above offense. They refuse to become what wounded them, and that, beloved, is strength. When you walk with God, your vision becomes clearer, your steps are aligned, your spirit rests, and evil loses its power over you. So remain wise, stay anchored, and never forget. Those who honor God in the quiet places will be shielded by Him in public ones. Evil may shout, evil may whisper, but those rooted in God will never be shaken. Evil may disguise itself, but it can never defeat the one who is rooted in the wisdom, presence, and authority of God. Let your spirit receive this truth. There comes a moment in every God-led life when you must decide, do you want peace with people or peace with God? You cannot have both. You cannot walk in divine purpose while embracing those with hidden agendas. The wise, those refined by hardship, shaped through rejection, and lifted through obedience. They've learned that peace with God is worth every season of isolation. They know the silence that comes from separation is far more sacred than the noise that comes from staying bound to darkness. Evil doesn't always enter with hateful speech. Sometimes it arrives with charm, with compliments, with words crafted to lure and control. It flatters, it affirms, it pretends to support. But behind the mask is the intent to infiltrate, to weaken, to subtly dismantle what God is establishing in you. But the discerning, those attuned to God's whisper, feel the disturbance. Even when no evidence is present, their peace becomes unsettled. And when divine peace is disrupted without cause, it is often heaven's nudge to pay attention. God rarely screams. He often whispers, and the wise have trained their ears to hear that whisper above the world's clamor. They don't wait for 10 signs. They don't dismiss conviction for convenience. They move quietly, swiftly, without drama, because they know delay in leaving darkness can derail their destiny. They trust that the ache of letting go is far less destructive than the consequences of disobedience. Evil isn't always what's loud and visible. It works in subtlety, in secrecy, in quiet sabotage. That's why the wise stay spiritually vigilant. They don't just pray when they're under attack. Prayer is their posture. Prayer is their rhythm, because they understand the most dangerous enemy is not the one who confronts you head on, but the one who sits close, smiling with a hidden agenda. They invite God to examine their circle to expose what eyes alone cannot see. Because no amount of charisma can replace godly character. And the wise don't entertain manipulation disguised as emotion. Evil will cry, evil will plead, evil will pose as the victim. But wisdom does not bow to performance. It bows to truth. It responds to divine direction. The wise have learned the line between mercy and betrayal of self, between helping someone and enabling destruction. They know not everyone wants healing. Some only want access. Access to your space, access to your peace, access to your purpose, just to dismantle it again. But those who walk in spiritual wisdom guard their calling like soldiers protecting sacred ground. They understand purpose is holy, and what is holy must be protected. Because when peace is gone, you've already surrendered far too much. Hear me. Those who walk in wisdom and reverence understand this. Elevation demands separation. You cannot ascend to the place God is calling you and remain entangled with what He already told you to let go. Evil will reach for your past, whispering reminders of who you once were just to block who you're becoming. But the soul anchored in wisdom lifts its gaze. They don't respond to old names. They don't re-enter old battles. They rise, and with every rising evil loses another hole. God grants clarity to those who ask for it. He exposes traps. He illuminates what was hidden. He brings light into shadowed places. But once that light shines, it's your move. And the wise don't hesitate. They don't debate with darkness. They don't dialogue with destruction. They move because they trust that when God reveals, He also provides the way out. They step from the familiar into the unseen, walking by faith, knowing that what is unknown to man is already fully prepared by God. God never calls His children out without preparing a place for them to enter in. Now lean in. Evil will often come knocking after healing has taken place. It tests the door. It searches for vulnerability. It wants to see if confusion still has access. But those refined by fire, those truly transformed, know this. Growth requires change boundaries. Not everyone can journey with you into the next chapter. Forgiveness is divine, yes, but it does not always require reunion. The wise close doors that once led to destruction, and they keep them shut, not in bitterness, in obedience, in protection. God's people are called to live with discernment, not fear, not paranoia, but holy perception, born of intimacy with the Spirit. The wise don't assume. They seek clarity in stillness. They don't fight every fight, only the ones God assigns. The rest they place on the altar, because surrender isn't quitting. It's trusting. It's handing over the weight, the worry, the outcome into the hands that never fail. And once in God's hands, the burden becomes blessed. The outcome becomes ordered. The battle becomes His. There is a divine calm that covers those holy trust. It cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It cannot be shaken. Even in betrayal, even in accusation, even in venomous storms, they walk in that peace because they know what God has spoken over their life is louder than what man whispers behind their back. They don't chase rumors. They don't seek revenge. They stay locked in purpose. Their focus becomes their fortress. Their faith becomes their shield. Their stillness becomes their sword. Receive this in your soul. The wise remain rooted in peace. Though evil may rage, they do not allow evil to define their response. They remain faithful, not because the path is simple, but because obedience is a command. And in their consistency, God honors them. In their restraint, he empowers them. In their surrender, he exalts them. You may not be able to stop evil from aiming at you, but you can stop it from seeping into your soul. And that right there is what the wise consistently do. They filter every situation through the truth of God's word, not through emotional reaction. They respond from conviction, not convenience. Do not envy the loud voices. Do not be fooled by those who appear powerful, because power without purity is a ticking clock. Its end is already set. Evil may scream, but its reign is temporary. Its voice fades with time. The wise understand this. They invest in what cannot be shaken. Integrity, not image, character, not clout. They cultivate depth in private, while the world performs in public, because they know what God builds in the hidden place, no devil in hell can tear down. Whatever is birthed in obedience stands unshaken. Whatever is built on compromise eventually falls. God is calling his children to rise in wisdom, a holy wisdom, one that discerns without bitterness, one that separates without pride, one that moves in quiet confidence, yet strikes with divine precision. This is the wisdom of the faithful. This is how the spiritually mature deal with evil, not with loud retaliation, but with clean motives, not with chaos, but with spiritual sharpness, not with fear, but with grounded presence. Stay faithful, stay alert, stay attuned to the whisper of the Spirit. Never forget this truth. Evil will always attempt, but it will never succeed. Where God reigns supreme, let that truth anchor your soul. Let it awaken in you the power of patience, the courage to perceive, and the discipline of godly wisdom. For when you walk hand in hand with the Lord, evil may come close, but it cannot consume. It may growl, but it cannot prevail. Because those who walk in divine wisdom live under divine shelter, and that covering is everlasting. Hear this clearly with full conviction. The truly wise, the ones who walk with God, not the crowd, cannot be fooled by flattery. They don't chase compliments. They aren't shaken by isolation. Because when your heart is rooted in God, attention no longer seduces you. Purpose anchors you. And when your life is anchored in divine purpose, evil finds no doorway into your heart, no foothold to rewrite your identity. The wise have tasted the steadiness of God's leadership. They know its worth, and they will not trade it for applause or shallow validation. Evil always presents a shortcut, a back alley, a fast lane to give you what you want without the cost of righteousness. But the wise decline every shortcut because they know whatever comes fast without God will not last. They choose the narrow way, not because it's smooth, but because it's sacred. They embrace the road that demands patience, demands sacrifice, demands strength, and they walk it without rushing because they understand every step made in the will of God becomes a foundation that evil cannot undo. They build not in haste but with intention, each layer established in prayer, each step anchored in truth. Never compromise. Evil finds its foothold in places where people have forgotten how to wait, where urgency replaces wisdom and solutions are chased without ever seeking revelation. But those who walk in wisdom, they wait. They understand that God speaks to the hearts that remain still long enough to hear him. They don't leap into relationships just to satisfy loneliness. They don't enter partnerships just to feel included. They inquire of the Lord. They wait on his confirmation. And when heaven is silent, they remain still, because moving without God isn't momentum, it's vulnerability. It's exposure to consequences that disguise themselves as progress. The truly wise would rather stay hidden in the covering of God than sprint into ruin, disguised as opportunity. Evil does not always destroy by force. Sometimes it corrupts slowly, subtly, through what we tolerate. It enters through the quiet compromises, the softened values, the casual words that begin to bend the truth. But smart people are not moved. They understand that the smallest compromises can open the door to spiritual collapse, so they hold the line. They refuse to adjust their convictions to comfort corruption. They will not water down holiness to make sin feel welcome. They draw their boundaries where God draws his, and they defend those borders with boldness born of intimacy with the Spirit. Because when you guard your spiritual boundaries, you are not just protecting your peace, you are preserving your assignment. The truly wise don't just appear strong when eyes are on them. They remain strong when no one is watching. Their wisdom is not a performance but a lifestyle. They win their battles not on stages but in secret. Because the real war is waged in the quiet, in the inner decisions, in the moments no one will ever see. Evil rarely announces itself with a roar. It often approaches in comfort, in nostalgia, in familiar desires. But those trained by God have developed spiritual sensitivity. They can detect anything that threatens their nearness to God, even when it looks good on the outside. Hear me on this. When God begins to raise you up, evil doesn't always show up to destroy. Sometimes it seeks to attach. It wants to benefit from the blessing it never labored for. It wants access to your favor without ever bowing in obedience. Wise people are discerning. They protect their promotion. They don't distribute their harvest to those who never sowed in sacrifice. They don't open their hearts to those who see them as an opportunity, not a covenant. They understand blessing comes with weight, and not everyone is equipped to carry it. So they remain vigilant, not fearful, but spiritually awake. They don't live in suspicion. They live in awareness. They know that discernment isn't about doubting others. It's about surviving spiritually. There's a sacred dignity to how the wise carry themselves. They walk in quiet confidence, not pride, because they know they represent something far greater than themselves. They are vessels of heaven's wisdom, stewards of divine responsibility. And because of that, they have no time for foolishness. They do not sit at tables where slander is served. They do not lend their strength to division. They do not trade their anointing for entertainment. They rise not out of superiority, but out of stewardship, because they know to whom much is given, much is required. And when divine responsibility rests upon you, you can no longer entertain evil just because it comes dressed as pleasure. The wise understand the sacred weight of their energy. They do not waste it explaining themselves to those who are committed to misunderstanding them. They don't exhaust themselves defending what God has already affirmed. They speak only when heaven gives them the word. They move only when heaven gives them the signal, and they rest not in fatigue, but in obedience, when God calls them to pause. Obedience is the cadence of their life. Alignment is their language. And peace, true unshakable peace, is their inheritance. They don't go looking for closure from evil hearts, because they've learned closure doesn't come from apologies that never arrive. It comes from God. Their identity isn't drawn from the affirmation of wicked people. It's sealed by the one who created them, called them, and walks beside them in every valley. Now hear this deep in your soul. Smart people don't become bitter from evil, they become better. Every betrayal adds to their wisdom. Every delay stretches their faith. Every slandered word sharpens their discernment. evil may try to press them down, but God uses it to lift them higher. What the enemy designed to destroy becomes the very fire that forges them into vessels of strength. Because the wise never waste their pain. They don't sit in it. They surrender it. They place it in God's hands, where pain is transformed into power, scars into strategy, and suffering into wisdom. That wisdom becomes their shield, their guide, their sword. Some may look at their silence and call it weakness, but the truly wise know sometimes the boldest thing you can do is walk away without shouting, without revenge, without trying to be understood. Just walk firmly, quietly, without guilt or explanation, because they know there's no loss in leaving what God never intended. That's not weakness. That's freedom. And in that freedom, they make room for holiness, for purity, for destiny. Evil cannot cling to what is truly anointed. And those who are wise never glance back at the chains God has already broken. Let this settle in your heart. The wise do not let evil dictate the narrative of their life. They do not let betrayal define who they are. They rise not with bitterness, but with revelation. They rise knowing that in God's economy, nothing is wasted. Every deceitful scheme, every fake alliance, every twisted word is still under God's jurisdiction. And when you're walking with God, justice is never delayed. It's divinely timed. And when it arrives, it is flawless, exact, undeniable. That's why the wise guard their hearts fiercely, cover their minds in constant prayer, and fortify their spirits with unshakable truth. Never forget, evil cannot win against the one who remains surrendered. Smart people know this. They don't fear evil. They don't yield to it. They outlive it. They outgrow it. And more than anything, they outwalk it, step by step, moment by moment, day by day, with God lighting the path. So let this truth take root in your spirit. This is how the wise confront evil. Not with fury, not with vengeance, not with compromise, but with a deep, unmovable wisdom, rooted in holy fear and divine direction. They do not descend to the level of darkness. They rise in the strength of light. They rise not in arrogance, but with the dignity born from discipline, with the quiet assurance of conviction, and the stillness that only spiritual strength can provide. Evil may scream, may provoke, may twist and manipulate, but those who walk in step with God do not waver. They move with a calm authority, shielded not merely by position or intellect, but by the holy presence of the Almighty, who sees the unseen, who weighs every heart, and who judges with perfect justice. The wise do not strive to win every argument. They understand the true victory is staying aligned with God. They don't feel the need to justify their obedience. They simply live it. And when the battle rages loudest, when the enemy presses closest, they do not panic. They stand firm, steady, because they know it is the Lord who fights for them. It is the Lord who goes before them. It is the Lord who vindicates the pure in heart and brings light to what has long been hidden in shadow. Evil may rise for a season, but in the presence of divine wisdom, it always falls. So choose to walk among the wise. Let your every step be guided by God. Let your responses be refined by truth, and let your entire life become a testimony that those who trust in the Lord will never be put to shame. Yes, you may walk a solitary road, but you will never walk alone. You may be overlooked, misunderstood, but you will never be abandoned. Remain steadfast, remain pure, remain in his presence. For in the end, it is not the loudness of evil that wins. It is the quiet endurance of a soul rooted in righteousness. And this, beloved, is the way of the wise. This is how the faithful overcome, not by striving, not by shouting, but by the power, the mercy, and the holy wisdom of God himself.